There are a few things that have happened in the last few years that have really changed the way we work and the way we play. They are primarily the Internet and mobility. Believe it or not, the Internet hasn't been around for forever. It's really only in the last 10 years or so it has become pervasive. I know that's hard to believe because now we think everything is there and we can't live without it. Likewise, we've also become a mobile society. Many of us work from one office or another, maybe multiple offices, or even sometimes from a home office. And often we travel around the world to do our work too. Microsoft understands the way we work has changed, and Office introduces a brand new tool set to help accommodate this. It's called the Office Web App, and basically it allows us to work with things like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, regardless of where we are or what time it is. In this chapter, we're going to explore what Office Web Apps have to offer, some of its limitations because it isn't perfect, but also how it can help you accommodate the way that you need to work today. The way that we work using computers has changed rapidly just over the past few years. We've gone from where everything used to take up an entire room for a single computer to working with desktops. Then we went to laptops, and then to palm tops, or basically mobile devices. And now we're talking about this thing called the cloud. But what exactly is the cloud? Well, in short, it's Internet-based computing. Now that could mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but for us it mostly means the ability to work out there instead of only in here. Those of you who are mobile users understand what that means. We're no longer tied to a single location. We can be anywhere we want and still do the work that we need to do. When you ask people to define cloud computing, you get a variety of answers, and it can be frustrating. Some will define it as narrowly as anything on virtual servers. Some will define it as broadly as anything that happens outside of the network firewall. Right now, I don't want you to get worried about the technical information. Just remember that for us, it's Internet-based computing and the ability to work anywhere we want. This, of course, requires shared resources, software, and data that can be provided on demand. And that last part, on demand, is really one of the critical parts. It's anywhere and anytime we want it. That requires that we have an infrastructure in place, and this includes collections of servers and programs and services, as well as places to store stuff. So that cloud really involves all kinds of things that normally people like network administrators and web developers worry about all the time. Fortunately for us, Microsoft is providing the infrastructure. So even if you're not a web developer or a network administrator, you'll be able to utilize cloud computing, thanks to Office. How exactly then does Office fit into this? Well, Microsoft Office dominates the desktop productivity market with more than 80% of the market share. And that means that applications like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint really lead the way in software usage. Yes, there are competitors and alternatives for word processing spreadsheets and presentations. However, when it comes to the bulk of documents produced from desktop productivity software, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint are responsible for the vast majority of it. That means that when we go to this cloud concept, the applications need to go mobile, but we also need to keep connected and not lose functionality. And that's been the challenge in the past. We've had some mobile applications, but they were very light. Sometimes they were just text-based. So we lost a lot of the capability to work with the functionality, and that's what made them less than ideal. We're trying to work with that here by going mobile and keeping things connected and retaining our full functionality, too. Microsoft's solution to that is to shift at least part of the work and part of the capabilities to the cloud, and that's what we're doing with Office Web Apps. Are these Office Web Apps we're talking about? Well, they're webified versions of Office. Now, I give people a hard time when they make up words, and I know that webified is a made-up word, but I think you get what I mean. Basically, this means that the applications themselves are running on a web server in the cloud instead of on your PC. When you have the applications that are running in the cloud, that means as long as you can access the cloud, you can do your work. This gives us the capability we're looking for. Any file on the server can be accessed from anywhere in the world, any time of day, 24/7, as long as those servers are up and running. And I can almost always guarantee that for the most part, Microsoft servers will be up and running 24/7. The other useful thing about the web apps is Microsoft did not make them proprietary. They're available on Windows, Linux, and Mac platforms. They're also available to mobile devices like PDAs, smartphones, and other web-enabled devices, and they're cross-browser compatible. So, of course, while Microsoft would love for you to be running everything on the latest version of Windows, using the latest version of Internet Explorer, that's not the reality. And so they have made it available to basically everyone, cross-platform, cross-device, and cross-browser. The web apps we have are Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote. Of course, you'll notice that not everything is here. For example, Outlook and Access aren't here, nor are the other things outside of the normal Office suite, like Project. But for the most part, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint have the bulk of usage, and they're definitely here, as is OneNote. So if you're on site at a customer site, or you're in class and you want to take notes, OneNote will allow you to capture that information and work with it just as if you were sitting at your desk. In addition, we'll be able to work from a variety of places. We can create things on web apps from within Office, from within a SharePoint service, or from SkyDrive. So what exactly do we get with these web apps? Is it the full functionality? Is it something different? How do we know what we'll get? Well, it's actually something in between, the full Office application functionality and the viewers that were offered in the past. If you've ever worked with a viewer, you know that they're often light. Like I said, you can view something, but you can't actually edit something. Or if you do have editing capabilities, it's extremely limited. It's also natural to assume that it won't be exactly like the full Office applications. We don't want it to replace these applications, but to be a supplement. So something in between the full app and the viewers. We will have the ability to create, edit, collaborate, and save files. It, of course, does not include the full functionality, and they're not intended to completely replace the full desktop apps. Right now, the web apps are supposed to be supplemental, but we still need to have the full desktop applications to do some things. So what exactly do we need in order to run this? Because the cloud sounds great, but we also talked about a lot of infrastructure that was required. Well, actually, for our use, we need very little. The only thing that is truly required is a web browser, and I think almost every up-to-date computer these days has a web browser, so that one should be easy. You could also have a Windows Live ID or a SharePoint account. Now these will give us access either to SkyDrive or to our SharePoint portal. Files, however, can be accessed and sometimes even edited without an ID or a SharePoint login. For example, if your SharePoint site allows anonymous access, then of course you would be able to access the files. I recommend that you get a Windows Live ID though, or a SharePoint login, just to make sure that you have everything you might possibly need in order to access the files that you want. The third thing that you might want to consider is Microsoft Silverlight, which is a browser add-in. Silverlight has been around for a while, but a lot of people aren't aware of it unless they happen to work with web applications. Basically, Silverlight gives us a performance boost, maybe enhanced, but remember, it's not required. It's also not necessary if you're accessing your information via SharePoint server Office. We won't get into all of the intricacies about why not, but basically SharePoint server takes care of all of this for us. So as I said, pretty easy. A web browser is the one and only requirement. A Windows Live ID or SharePoint account, And Microsoft Silverlight will simply enhance your experience and give you more capabilities. Before we go further, I want to make a small note about change. At the current time, web applications are fully supported in a variety of current browsers and across platforms. But the design and intention is for web apps to evolve with technology. That's the benefit of the cloud. Since everything is in the cloud, they can update things there, and we don't have to reinstall and update and upgrade and all of those other things that usually go with getting new versions of software. So at any time, we might get some additional functionality. There might be additional browsers that are supported, additional mobile devices, all of those things, and these can occur at any time. So even though I think web apps are great at the moment, I know they're going to get even better, and we just need to stay tuned to see what the capabilities may be in the future. So what more could you possibly need to know? Well, a couple of things that I want to point out specifically so I can make sure that you hear what I'm saying and read what I'm saying. To view files using web apps, they must be saved in the 97 to 2003 format or later. Now that's not going to be a problem for a vast majority of people. 97 to 2003 or 2007 or Office. All of those applications are going to be supported, and that's great for viewing files. However, if you want to edit the files using a web app, they must be in the Open XML format. That's that new format that was introduced in Office 2007 and has continued over Office. So in order to edit the files, you need to be working with a DocX or an XLSX or a PPTX type of file. I like to point that out because otherwise some people can get confused. We will always be able to view the files even in the older formats, but editing does require the new format. It's important to recognize, though, that I'm talking about viewing and editing files as they sit on the server. To view or edit them from the server, they need to be in those formats, but you can always download a file from a SkyDrive or a SharePoint account, regardless of what format it's in, and work with it on your computer or mobile device, regardless of the format. In fact, I can store any type of file I want on those accounts, not just Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote. The limitation to those 4 applications is that they are the only web apps, but web apps and storage are 2 different things. So even though we try to put them together, remember that they are 2 different things. I can store any kind of file I want on a SkyDrive, but I can only use the web apps to edit and view those files if they are Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or OneNote. Another thing to realize is that simply opening a file using a web app does not change the file at all. If I only open it, then the web app is just acting as a viewer, and the file remains unchanged. Of course, if you open the file and edit the file, then it will be changed. But I think what a lot of people are concerned about is that sometimes when you've uploaded things to web servers, it actually changed the format into something other than a Word document, a PowerPoint file, or an Excel spreadsheet. With web apps, the web application does not change the file format at all. It will remain exactly what it was when you first opened it. So the next thing people will say is that they've used some web applications before and it made things look different. For example, in SharePoint, you're used to the rich feature set that you used to see, and when you open it up as a mobile version, all you get to see is a boring text version. Well, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that if that's what you have, but the good news is that basically everything will look pretty much the same in the web apps as it does in the full application. Microsoft has worked very hard to make it as consistent as possible. There are, of course, some application-specific differences, and we'll have to go through those when we talk about the PowerPoint, Excel, and Word versions of the web app itself. But in general, some things will always be true. Each of our web applications has a ribbon, and the ribbon works the same way that it does in the full application by using tabs, groups, and options. Our features, however, are going to be scaled down, but all of the applications have at least a File tab, a Home tab, and an Insert tab. We also have our quick access toolbar on the upper left side of the screen, but in the web apps, it has only an undo and a redo command. We can't customize it and add other features that we might be used to seeing. We don't have contextual tabs in the web apps, but all of them also have an Open In option. In other words, if I'm looking at an Excel spreadsheet, I can view it on the web app, but I have the opportunity to open it in Excel or open a presentation in PowerPoint or a Word document in Word. If we're using a computer that has a version of Office that we can use, then of course this is great, because even though the file itself exists in the cloud, we can open it and use full editing tools, just as we would if it were on our desktop. Then we can save it right back to the cloud. This, I think, is the ultimate way that we'll use web apps. But if we're on a computer, maybe at a client site or in a classroom, where we don't have Office for some reason, at least with the web apps, we'll be able to open it and do some basic editing. Actually, even some more full-fledged editing than we've ever been able to do before. And that really is the beauty of it. We're not tied to only a computer that has full Office. We can edit things from anywhere, at any time, at least to some level. One last thing to set your mind at ease is that the content area or the working area is going to be consistent. So when you're used to seeing column and row headers in Excel, you'll see the column and row headers and things like the formula bar in the web app for Excel as well. I think it will really be a very comfortable environment for you, and I think you'll like what you see.